Welcome to the American Theatre Wing's Working in the Theatre Seminars, now in their 30th year, coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. Today's seminar is devoted to the production of the new Broadway musical, Avenue Q. With the members of its creative and production teams, we will follow the show from its beginning, off-Broadway, through to the current production on Broadway. I'm Isabel Stevenson, Chairman of the Board of the American Theatre Wing. And so now, let me introduce our moderator for the seminar, director, actor, and writer, Lonnie Price. Lonnie?
Well, I'm totally delighted to be here because I'm this huge fan of the show. So when they called and asked if I would come and moderate, I couldn't think of anything I'd rather do. And also to introduce you guys to, by the way, how many of you have seen Avenue Q? Have you? You're the lucky ones. Okay, great. The rest of you, you need to get there very soon. The way we'll start is I just want to introduce our panel, and I will just tell you what their function on the show is, and later we'll get into their sort of bios and that sort of thing. Next to Isabel is book writer Jeff Whitty. And we're just going to get the camera time to pan away. There he is. And next to him is Rick Lyon, who is a puppeteer on the show, and I'm sure has many other functions as well. To my right is the dazzling producer Robin Goodman, one of them on this show. To my left is one of the composers and lyricists. They actually write together. They write both together, which I really need to find out about. This is Bobby Marks. No, I'm sorry, this is Bobby Lopez. I failed already. This is Bobby Lopez. And thank you. And next to him is Jeff Marks, his collaborator, music and lyrics both. And on the far left is a wonderful producer, Jeffrey Seller, who is responsible for the amazing Rent, as well as the Puccini La Boheme, and De La Guardia. So we'll talk about everybody's actually past and career. Before we start, I thought that it might be really great for you all to take a look at a piece from the show. So I've selected something that's one of my favorite parts, and I think they're going to roll the film right about now. I think you can watch them on.
If you were gay, that'd be okay. I mean, 'cause hey, I like you anyway, because you see, if it were me, I would feel free to say that I was gay, but I'm not gay. I'm happy just being with you.
I but choose, pal Joey.
So what should it matter to me what you do in bed with guys?
Nicky, that is gross.
No, it's not. If you were gay, I'd shout, hooray!
I am not
And here I'd stay. But I wouldn't get in your way. You can count on me to always be beside you every day, to tell you it's okay. You were just born that way, and as they say, it's in your DNA. You're gay.
I am not gay.
If you were gay.
What'd you think? What'd you think of it, Rick? You've never seen it before?
I've never seen that.
You'll tell us later what you thought of it. I think it sounds like. Let's start at the beginning. So, Bobby and Jeff, you met, and did you meet at BMI or did you meet before that?
In the BMI Lehman Engel Musical Theater Workshop.
Right.
Yeah, we were both working as composer-lyricists separately. So I was writing my own songs and he was writing his own songs, and we got kind of lonely. Everyone else was collaborating in the workshop, and we felt like we were missing out. So we decided to collaborate on something, and that led to us working together.
And how many years ago was that?
5 or 6, something like that. 5, 6.
And did you stay in the workshop through this whole process?
Yeah, sort of. Actually, we wrote most of the Avenue Q songs in the workshop.
And you brought this is the BMI Lehman Engels BMI Musical Theater Workshop, where songs are discussed by your class, and they're sort of you've given. Who's your mentor there? Was it Maury Yeston?
Maury Yeston.
Right. And so you sort of developed it in the BMI workshop, yes?
Yeah. It was the first. It's actually, If You Were Gay was like the first song we brought in to the class with Maury.
It has such a the show has such a specific tone which I want to address with Jeff Whitty as well. Has it been fairly consistent? Did you hit it fairly quickly, the irreverence and the kind of off-center humor that it is?
I think yeah, we had the off-center humor from the beginning, but certainly we never expected it to grow into a full-length Broadway show. I don't think. The idea was first to do a television show that was more of a parody in nature, and we were writing. We wrote If You Were Gay. We wrote Everyone's a Little Bit Racist, and we came up with the characters and.
The Internet is for porn.
All good titles.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Stuff like that. Those mock educational songs.
And who had the idea to do this sort of, are we allowed to say the word Sesame Street kind of idea? Oh, we're not allowed to say that, maybe.
Well, never heard of it.
Were you fans of children's television?
Yeah, we grew up on it. Actually, the idea for doing a show with puppets came before the idea for doing an educational show.
I see.
We were writing a movie that we hoped we would sell to the Jim Henson Company. It was for the Muppets.
Right.
Which you know well. You were in one of the Muppet movies.
Yeah.
Survivor of the Muppet movie, yes.
And through workshopping that and demonstrating it, we met Rick, and seeing him perform puppets, we went, wow, puppetry live is really, really cool.
It sure is.
And it works for musicals because it gets past that whole problem that some people have with people breaking out into song on stage.
I mean, it's animation these days, it's
Right.
satire, and it's puppets, and it seems like we need some sort of gimmick to make that accessible to people, and
People
sadly.
no one says, "Oh, give me a break. That puppet would never break into song."
Now that puppet would, but that puppet would. Just before we leave you guys, so just tell me, because I'm always interested in this, you both write both. Now, what does that mean? Someone, explain your process. Does one of you get an idea? Is there a...
No, well, usually, the composer writes the music and the lyricist writes the lyrics, but we actually, Bobby, writes music and lyrics, and I write music and lyrics. So we decided early on to just try sitting in a room together and hashing it all out. We don't split things up.
So it's not like you write one song and he writes another song.
No,
you
we
both
don't
write all of them.
Yeah, we
Right.
don't work on anything individually. We don't bring in ideas. We really, because then, somebody works on something for 4 hours and brings it in, the other person goes, I don't love it. You go, what do you mean I worked for 4 hours on this? How can you not like it that quick? So we work on everything together at the same time, in the same room. And we only keep what we both like.
Do you come up with a vamp or a title, or is there any more specific you can get about your process?
I think quite often we go into a restaurant away from a piano and decide what we're going to do, whether it's a title or a rhyme or something, or an idea for a melody, hum something, and then we maybe get a quatrain or something, bring it back to a piano, and then
So you really do it together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
And most of it's done in cafes and restaurants, coffee
So
shops.
did you gain a lot of weight writing the show?
We like having people walk around and interrupt us and having life, not, being in a little secluded room.
Any particular coffee shop that's inspiring?
Yes, yeah, downtown, 8th Street and 3rd Avenue, around the clock.
I'll be there tomorrow if I can come up with a show half as good as yours. So now, is the next person that was involved in this was Rick? Did you find Rick?
Yes.
yeah.
Rick, tell us just a little bit about your background and how long you've been a puppeteer and all of that, can you?
Oh, well, how long is this program? I've been a puppeteer since I can remember. I've been interested in the form since childhood, and certainly the things that I saw early on in life that attracted me to puppetry were like Kukla, Fran, and Ollie.
Oh, sure.
And even the puppets on like the Captain Kangaroo show.
Yeah.
I'm so dating myself.
I remember those.
But so it was puppetry on TV was really how I was exposed to it, and the first time I saw a puppet show live was I think at the 1964 World's Fair. There was a Punch and Judy guy doing a show there, and I saw that live, and I went, "Oh my gosh, this doesn't just exist in this little tiny box in my living room. It can happen live." So I've always been interested in puppetry, and by the time I was 11 years old, I was already sewing and building my own puppets and that sort of thing. But always as a hobbyist, never something that I considered as a serious career. I studied theater in college, and I was always on stage. And
Where was that? Which college was that?
Penn State. A very tiny little theater department, which actually worked in my favor because at the time, when you're in college, everybody's the same age. And
Funny about that. It's true.
and when you're casting shows,
That's right.
you're sort of stressed for character part. And since I was so out of the box a character actor, I worked a lot at Penn State. I was in shows and shows and shows and shows. I was just always on stage. So I got to really exercise my chops a lot, as opposed to some big, huge department that had a lot of people. It was a very small little thing. So it was, you know, small pond, big fish kind of thing. And all during that time, I kept doing puppet things, and somewhere during college, and I don't know how to this day, one of my professors found out that I did puppets and encouraged me to do public performances in that community, and I started doing that. And slowly, the theater stuff started falling away, and the puppet stuff started emerging as being more dominant force in my life. And I suddenly found myself paying my phone bills by doing puppet shows and going, hey, wow, I paid like 30% of my rent this week, you know, this month doing puppet shows. And so I started thinking, well, maybe there is some, you know, career aspiration buried here somewhere in this thing that I've always been doing. And after college, I sought out some training and exposure to other puppeteers, because up until that time, I was the only person I ever had met that called themselves a puppeteer. And so I went to a program that used to be affiliated with the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center up in Connecticut, which sadly no longer exists, called the Institute for Professional Puppetry Arts or something like that, and was exposed to puppetry in a professional mode for the very first time. And it was while I was there that I ran into Jim Henson and started working for him and blah, 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 blah. And so that's when I really started singularly focusing in on puppetry.
And when did your paths cross? When did you guys
Well,
meet?
it's funny because Jeff and I had a mutual friend, and Jeff had told her that you know, they were doing this puppet piece, and they wanted somebody to perform a puppet, and she recommended me. And I came over and said, "Hi, I don't know you guys. You don't know me. What are you doing?" And I ended up, demoing one of their songs in class, and that's sort of how it all got started.
And that's about how long ago now? That would 4
4
years?
years ago.
Just about 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And excellent. And now, when did Jeff Whitty join the team?
That was later. That was after.
Yeah, much
That was
that-
after
that was after-
Robin and Jeffrey got on board.
Ah, see, okay,
Right.
okay, great. So I'm learning too. That's great. So you have this show, which was in my circles whispered about endlessly, of this amazingly funny, terrific, irreverent musical. And so, what did you do? You involved Rick. Did you do some readings of it?
We did
We
one
did.
reading.
We had like 6 songs, and we thought it was going to be a TV show. So we put it on its feet. A friend of ours was associate director or something rather of the York Theater, or assistant associate or whatever. And he said, on some Monday night, would you like to come use the theater?
But
We
I
said-
saw you at BMI. That's
Oh,
right.
did you?
Yes.
did?
You guys
I
don't
didn't know
remember?
that. Oh no.
Was that when we were doing the puppets ourselves? We
No,
were-
no, Rick was there, and
Oh.
I saw you at BMI. That's where I saw you.
Doing an
Okay.
Avenue Q song or
Yes,
the Kermit thing?
yes, you did 2 songs. My friend Sharon Werner from HBO said, she'd just seen these guys performing at BMI weeks before, and then I should check them out. It's the funniest stuff she'd ever seen. And so I went up there because I think it was the first time I'd ever been to BMI, actually. That's how I remember. And I saw you guys, and I think Ann Harada was there. I think you did Racist, actually. Is that possible? Did you do Racist at BMI?
In class?
We did
I
it in
don't know.
class, but we didn't do it with puppets.
No?
We did
Well,
it.
I saw you do, I think, Racist and Gay. I think those were the 2 songs.
Was Bobby wearing a red wig? Because we did it once without puppets, with Bobby wearing a red
I
wig.
was-
I think
yeah, I
I was
played
wearing
Kate
a red
Moss.
wig. I don't remember that part, but
You
I
were
remember
playing
that's where I
puppets.
saw you because you hadn't done the York thing, because the York thing you only did once, correct? Or did you do
yeah,
it twice?
for 4 nights.
Yeah, but remember that, because that's when I met with you guys,
Yeah.
and I said this would be a great musical. We should develop it into a
Right.
musical, and you said no, I want to do a TV show. But thanks so much.
Well,
Being the persistent person I am, I didn't give up.
And that's about 4 years ago,
It's about
Robin?
3.5, 4 years
Yeah,
ago.
3.5.
And
Well, we had stood up at this reading. We invited everyone we knew, and we said, if you know anyone at Comedy Central or Fox or HBO,
yeah,
please
you
tell
asked
them
me.
about us.
You asked me to invite all those people.
That's right. And you invited Jeffrey and Kevin.
I invited Jeffrey and Kevin and 3 or 4 other producers and television people. And out of you did it at the York. And out of all those people, the only brilliant people who emerged interested in the project were Jeffrey and Kevin.
His partner, Kevin McCullum.
Yeah, and Kevin McCullum, who's not here. And we got together. We didn't know each other that well, really, but we liked each other. And we said, let's develop, yeah, we get it. Let's make it into a real Broadway, actually not Broadway at all. Let's make it into a musical.
So did you both approach, well, first of all, Jeffrey, tell me, what was your take on it when you first saw it?
I think that there's three kinds of laughter. There's the, that's funny. You say it. There's the, you smile. And then there's the laughter that just takes over your entire body. So when I went to the York Theater, which is in the basement of a church on Lexington Avenue, at Robin's suggestion, I witnessed these 6 songs, and I just had that kind of laughter take over my body, and knew right there that I wanted to participate in bringing this show to its next step.
Which you thought was a theater piece. You agreed with Robin.
Yeah,
that it
Robin
could be
and
a
I,
theater piece.
though we don't know each other, seem to share a lot of the same values theatrically. And we thought, well, this should be a book musical.
Interesting.
And then our job was to convince these guys that it should be a book musical.
Very stubborn guys.
So it was sort of a review. It was sort of a review, just song.
Well, they wanted a
No,
TV
it was a
show.
TV
They
pilot.
So it did have a plot.
It did have a plot.
And did you guys write what it was the spoken material as well?
We did. We were writing it with another co-book writer, and we expanded it. So at that point, we expanded it into a full-length 3-act musical, which still resembled a TV show.
Right, it was very much a hybrid, and the
Did
story
it have the
didn't
dramatic
work.
arc that we know of, that it has now?
No.
It did not.
So that's when the producers said, we need a real playwright to make it into a play.
It didn't have a love story.
Well, it had the fine
Wasn't she
line
hit
song.
by a car or something?
It had it had a car accident. It had
Very
the
sad.
fine line song, and it had the love someone song,
Right.
and it had the college song and the
I see.
deeper songs, but it didn't yet have a convincing
structure.
structure that
and I'm
made it work.
assuming that you're getting ready to enter here, Jeff Whitty. And how did that happen?
Well, Jeffrey and I, almost it was like it simultaneously thought of Jeff Whitty, because you read the Planck Project, correct?
Yeah.
And I was going to see the Planck Project because I knew Jeff from, I had a reading series when I was at Manhattan Theater Club, and Jeff was part of it. 'Cause
Robin gave me my first reading with professional actors as a playwright.
By the way,
years
I'd like
before.
to just take a moment to talk about Robin Goodman. Robin Goodman is the co-founder of Second Stage, which is an extraordinary theater where she's produced over 50 plays and musicals. She also produced Metamorphoses, the amazing Metamorphoses. She was an associate producer of A Class Act. Bat Boy, Tick Tick Boom. In a very short time, she has become a major force in the theater as a commercial producer, having been a major force in the non-for-profit world. So I'm really glad she's with us
I'm just happy to
today.
be around all these cute men.
She's known in the business as a lady with taste, which is unusual for producers, I have to say. Not usually. And a great aesthetic. So anyway, Jeff, you had known Robin and Jeffrey, and or you'd known Robin. She
I knew
gave you
Robin.
that
I didn't
reading,
know
yeah?
Jeffrey at that point.
And so they called you and said, "We've got this puppet show. We don't." What did they say?
Yeah, my agent called and said, "How would you feel about writing a musical for puppets?" And I hadn't thought about it. I'd never thought about writing a musical actually before because I'd never written one.
So tell me a little bit about your background. You've written straight plays before.
Just plays, mostly comedies with sort of a dark bent to them.
He's also a wonderful actor.
Yeah.
And I act as well, but yes. So I met in the office with Bobby and Jeff, who I'd never met before. I mean, this all seems to be an introduction of strangers, one after the other. But and I heard the score, and I knew I loved the songs and thought they were really funny. And just little by little, we went to the Museum of Broadcasting and watched some old Sesame Street episodes, the pilot, and we just began to talk and eventually hammered out a draft that would have a story arc. But at this point, it was very much pieces, characters that, as a playwright, characters come out of necessity. And this was this collection of fascinating, very vivid characters who didn't necessarily fit into a story at that point.
So you had to work backwards, essentially.
Work backwards, and there were songs that suggested a story. There's a song called Mixtape that's sort of the beginning of a love story, and a song called Fine Fine Line that's about a breakup. But then there were songs called Everyone's a Little Bit Racist and The Internet is for Porn, and they were hilarious songs, and they had to be in the show.
Right.
So it was a matter of assembling all these pieces and finding why they were necessary and what the tone and style of the show would be that would allow for these the fun songs that weren't quite so plot oriented to fit in, as well as the more plot driven songs, and then new songs were written as well.
Well, I think you did a masterful job, and what's also marvelous about the show is that the voice is so unified. You know, it doesn't sound like the songwriters left off and the book writer came in. It sounds like it's one voice saying, talking to us, which is quite unusual, actually. And its structure is sensational. And you talk about laughing. And when you go to the Golden Theater, it's an unusual thing to see an entire audience, and almost all the time, laughing all the time. Usually you get sort of a pocket here and a pocket there, but belly laughs, and you can watch them rock. It's an amazing thing.
I think we also have to say, even though we haven't quite gotten there, that Jason Moore, our director, was a big part of...
Now, when did Jason come in? Even though he's not here, we can talk about him. Particularly since he's not here.
I think about 1 year after Jeff.
No, it was about 6 months, because we all hammered out this first draft that was this. You know, for me, I was just trying to figure out how to write a book, and so it was very, very wordy and very. I didn't understand how terse you had to be.
Right.
And then Jason came in, and that's when it all began to click, because we wrote another draft, threw out the old one completely, and wrote a whole new one, which had it had the purpose arc in it, didn't it?
Yeah, the purpose arc came in when Jason came on board.
Was that his idea?
No, it was Jeff's idea. And
the lead character's looking for his purpose in life is sort of.
He's just come out of college, and he's facing his life, and it's something also which is so terrific. And I know it's very important to you, Jeff, and to you, Robin, is that it's a show about people in their 20s, for people in their 20s as well. I mean, it's not a show that you look around that theater and it's not a lot of people in their 60s and 70s like a lot of other musicals, but actually it's young people who are coming to the theater to see it, which is terrific.
Where do you come from? Literally.
Where did I grow up? Oh, I grew up in Oregon.
And where?
In Oregon.
Right.
And I moved here about 10 years ago.
You went to school in Oregon?
I did my undergraduate in Oregon. I went to NYU for
What
grad
brought
school.
you to New York?
Vague thoughts of being in the theater somehow. I didn't, I didn't have a specific plan at that point.
And you came just without knowing anything about the theater in New York?
I didn't. I worked at Joe Allen for my first year here.
Well, that'll teach you a lot.
And I still wanted to be in the theater. That's extraordinary. So Jeff, you joined the group, and you had Jason and you had Jeff.
Jason was extraordinary. I
He
just
really
want to
was.
put in a word for
was
Jason.
incredible.
He was
Yeah.
fantastic. He really had a brilliant sense of structure, dramatic structure. And you know, collaboration isn't always easy, you know. And he kept us on a course, and he kept them working and always improving, always improving. I thought.
So now we've got the team, we've got Jason, we've got Jeff, and then what? Readings after that? Workshops? What happened?
was that the O'Neill? Yeah,
No,
then
but we did a couple of readings
we
before
did.
that.
Yeah, we did.
So Robin, essentially you and Jeff and Kevin optioned the show. Is that what happened?
Yes, Jeffrey and Kevin and I, all three of us together, optioned the show. Yes.
Okay, so that's the first thing, and that is a payment to the authors, essentially.
Correct.
And for a period of how long is the option run for something like that? A couple of years with extensions?
A year with an extension, I think it was.
No, I think a standard option is 2 years with an extension.
it
You
2
buy an
years?
option for 24 months.
I see. Great. And so you guys get producers, you've got a director, you've got a book writer, and you start doing some workshops. So what was that process like?
Well, it was. I think the first one we did was just a table reading, really, of our first draft, and that was encouraging because we finally had the arc. We had a story that was seeming to work. It wasn't quite right, and then the next thing that we did was rewrite it completely with Jason on board, completely, like threw out whole sections, and it must have been really hard for Jeff because we threw out whole scenes and sections.
No, I mean, in writing a musical, the one thing you learn is how great it feels to cut anything. Any word you can cut is a gift.
We had
Economy.
hundreds of
Really?
meetings in Jason's apartment where we would just hash
out a new story, and it's really hard to write a simple story. It's just really hard. And I think the next thing we did was do a reading sort of to solicit some backers.
That was, but then we sort of combined drafts. Remember? Because the problem with the second draft was that it was very too efficient.
I see.
It didn't have enough sort of mess and fun in it, so we took kind of pieces of both of them and reassembled.
I see.
Right. Well, there was Manhattan Theater Club, right? We did a reading of just the first act, and then Jason who was narrating, sort of, just sort of summarized the second act, and it was like, oh, now it's over. Then a miracle happens, and the story is over. And then at that point, it seemed like we actually had something. It felt right. And
Yes.
we after that, I think the producers brought us to the O'Neill Center, where we had our real workshop.
And that was how many summers ago now? Is that 2 years ago?
2 summers ago.
2 summers ago. And that's a 2-week workshop at the O'Neill?
It was 3 weeks, wasn't it?
Two.
Oh, it was 2?
2 writing weeks, and you live up there, right?
Yeah,
and
it's
so
heaven.
that's like
that
every
was great.
Yeah.
And you have 5 live performances in front of audiences, and each one, there's space between each one, and you're encouraged to
do some writing.
do the second act first, toss things, change, drop characters, add.
And the
drop
actors
songs.
involved in that, any of them still with you?
Almost all of them.
Oh, that's great.
Just
That's
about all
amazing.
of them. 5 out of 7.
But by that time, we had involved the Vineyard and the New Group.
Now, how did that
That's
happen?
true. That's true.
Yeah, because they were up there with us. Let's not forget. Well, Scott Elliott of the New Group was at one of the readings. And
Like
he,
Manhattan Theater Club or something
yes,
like that?
Manhattan Theater Club. And he flipped for it. He just loved it. I had invited Doug Abel because Jeffrey and Kevin and I had decided that it would be good to do it in a small, not-for-profit venue in New York, just to to work on it and give it shape and not let it be overexposed. The right way to start a musical, we thought.
Were
This
both of
musical.
you thinking of it as a Broadway show
No.
or as an off-Broadway show?
No, I remember the moment when we realized it was possible. I remember we looked at each other and we said, maybe this could go to Broadway.
Really? But at the
Yeah.
moment, it was just an off-Broadway?
Yeah, it was just a musical. I mean, and probably for off-Broadway is what we thought. Right? Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, at first we didn't know if the puppets would play
Yes.
to a Broadway-sized house.
Right.
So, as we developed the show, we absolutely thought this will be a terrific off-Broadway musical that would play, in the tradition of the original Little Shop of Horrors,
Sure,
or play at the Orpheum or at the Minetta Lane or a theater like that. That's how we imagined it.
Right.
But I think it's an interesting thing about the theater, which is that when you make a show, you don't know who it's for yet, and you don't know where it's going to land. And Lord knows, we never thought before we did it at the Vineyard that Avenue Q would be a Broadway show. And of course, going backward in time to my past, I never thought Rent, obviously, was going to be a Broadway show, nor did Jonathan Larson.
But it's interesting because we invited a bunch of not-for-profit producers that we wanted to sort of help us develop the show, and several of them said, well, who's it for? Who's the audience for this, with the puppets?
And there's a good answer to that. Anyone who ever said, I don't know who it's for,
It's not for you.
Anybody
I'm
but
sorry,
you.
I took your punchline.
but you got the laugh. And I wrote the line.
It's Jeffrey's line. It's totally Jeffrey's line. I'm sorry. It just came out. So anyway, Doug Abel couldn't make the reading, but he saw them perform at a benefit.
Yeah, he just saw one number.
He saw one number, and he flipped out, and he called me and said, I made a big mistake not coming to that reading. He said, I'm interested. So we said, well, if you can work with the New Group, if the Vineyard and the New Group can do it together, that's okay with us, but you guys have to talk. And
Now, that's pretty unusual that 2 not-for-profits
yes.
get together in collaboration.
Yes.
Was that tricky?
well, no, because it turned out they were old friends.
Oh, fine.
Which was a lucky break for us. And both wonderful guys and wonderful producers. And in fact, doing a musical for either theater was a big endeavor and an expensive endeavor for them. So actually pooling their resources helped them both be able to do it.
So now we're at the point where the Vineyard is committed to doing a
And
production, an off-Broadway production.
the New Group.
With the New Group.
Yes.
Now, is enhancement money given to the Vineyard Theater by you guys?
Yes.
Yes.
And how much
Absolutely.
enhancement money would that be?
That was
$150,000.
$150,000.
And what is the Vineyard's portion? So you're getting $150,000. So the Vineyard has a budget of what that you're adding to?
I think that the show ultimately cost off-Broadway $450,000.
So you
maybe, in fact, I'm sorry, maybe closer to $500,000
Yeah,
because it went over budget.
I
Yeah.
see, I see. And so then the Vineyard and the New Group split the other part. Are you,
Yeah,
are you
I think
third
actually we
party?
wound up
We
putting in
put in
about
more.
200, and
Yeah.
then the two of them each put in like 150, or I mean, I
Something
don't know
like
the
that.
exact details.
I think they
but,
did about 150.
but we put in fact, we wound up going to about 200.
And what? And in terms of you open.
The idea was one-third, one-third, one-third.
Right. So you're
That was
partners.
the
You're
idea.
fairly equal partners.
Right.
So then it opens at the Vineyard. Well, tell me just a little bit about previews. Hell, okay, fun.
Oh my God, it was such hell. It was absolute torture.
Tell us everything.
Rehearsals were torture because
Why?
we were worried about how it would play and whether we had to cut a number that was dear to our hearts.
Oh my God!
And,
Yeah, it was about.
But you're not upset about it anymore.
Oh my God, it's still a sore subject.
it's
Don't
all
talk
fine.
about
It
it.
is still a sore subject. It was a great song. It was about jury duty.
Do it for us right now.
It was called "Tear It Up and Throw It Away."
Rick can do it
You'll
for
hear
you
it
right now.
sometime.
You can no bonus cut
It
on
was
the
a fun.
CD.
It was a fun
We
song.
tried.
And that's a sore
Lonnie,
point
why
too.
don't you just put a paper, give me a paper cut and put some lemon juice on it?
Where's Michael Rito?
I'm not on anyone's side. I'm not on anyone's side. All right, so previews were hell.
But we learned to deal with it.
Well, what is the hard part about it? I mean, you're putting it in front of an audience, you're seeing what works, what doesn't work. Is the hell part that other people are telling you what they think works and what you should change and you don't want to change it? I mean,
we were
what
open to change.
You were open.
And
what
everyone
about you,
was
Jeff?
working.
Do you feel you were pretty open to changes?
Yeah, you hear it. You can hear it in
Right.
the audience. That's what's great about previews is when something isn't landing.
They're rustlers.
And
they're
you
rustlers,
gotta
they're rustling their papers.
You got to
and
get
stuff.
working, and we were cranking it out. The show that began previews is quite different than the one that opened. I mean, I was
True.
firing sometimes like a 20-page stack of new pages
Every day, right.
some days,
Yeah.
and they're a gift, previews, but they really are. They're harrowing because you've got this. It's tick, 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 tick.
How were they for you?
Oh, well.
A lot of changes.
Yeah, it was intense. I mean, as a performer in the show, being handed a stack of this stuff to master for tonight. Oh, okay.
And not just for you, but for your friend with you.
Well, yeah, but the friend follows. But no, I mean, it's always intense when you're handed this massive amount of material to hopefully get some sense of mastery through the process. For me, it was just on a personal note, for me it was a very difficult time because was it
Talking about the accident?
Yeah. Did we actually even start previews, or was it during?
Yeah, we were about-
yeah,
I
it
think
was,
it was
like
about
our
our
third
fifth
or
Right
fourth.
before we
yeah,
opened, yeah.
our third or fourth preview. I had a mishap and basically walked off a stage and fell down the escape stairs and sprained my ankle very badly and couldn't continue. We actually had to cancel the rest of the performance because I couldn't continue. In one sense, the fact that it is a musical with puppets in it actually saved us and allowed us to keep the show going because a lot of the characters that I play in the show are two-handed puppets. They're actually performed by two puppeteers working in tandem, as you saw in the clip from If You Were Gay. I'm in the head of the puppet and in one hand, and there's another puppeteer who's in the other hand who's assisting me. And my being off stage basically was an opportunity for her to take over the puppet instead of just assisting. She took over the manipulation of the character while I did all the voices for the characters off stage.
We should say that off-Broadway, or at least in a nonprofit, there's no understudies.
That's
You
right.
can't
Yeah, there are
afford
no understudies off Broadway, so
So if it weren't for that, I mean,
we
would've
had to
cancel it.
solve the
I
problem.
actually saw one of those performances, and it was kind of extraordinary because even though we knew where you were, you kind of just bought the whole thing. It was but I'm sure it was frustrating for you to not be on stage.
Well, not really. I mean, it is a job, and so I was still able to do my job. So that was what was important. But that was one of the situations that having the puppets being a part of the thing actually allowed us to do that because the lady who assists me and who is also in the Broadway show, Jennifer Barnhart, knew my track so well from just walking around doing my right hand that she could step in and manipulate my puppets and do the track. It also shifted a bunch of other things around, but we were able to do them because the audience will buy a puppet character as long as the performance is consistent. So that was an additional stress of
previews for you.
Well, and it also shifted a lot of responsibilities for other people. One of the hardest things about this show, honest to gosh, just regardless of everything else, the choreography and learning the lines and the songs and music and everything, one of the hardest things about this show is the not choreography exactly, but the staging of the way that the puppets get passed back and forth between people, because we have puppeteers who are playing two characters, two different characters, and sometimes their characters appear on stage together. And how you make that happen, and how you make puppets shift back and forth and so forth, is an extraordinarily complicated traffic pattern. And so when we added that to the already stressful process of getting new lines and getting new songs and new cuts and everything, that was very difficult doing previews. Actually, you know, the Broadway run has been a piece of cake compared to going through that preview process at Off-Broadway.
You know, I think one of the reasons for that, because one of the challenges of this show was the set. And
I wanted to talk about
designing the
designers,
set
too.
in proportion to people and puppets.
Well, Ana Luisa did the set design, which is extraordinarily brilliant. It's just very witty, and watching the Broadway version of it, watching how it is expanded to be Broadwayified, it's just a total delight. It's like a character in the show.
It really is.
And it's Howell Binkley is your lighting designer, and I don't remember your costume.
Moreno Rada.
I didn't remember that. But
What
it's,
about
thing-
the,
but be- oh, I'm
what
sorry.
about the unions? Do you have to have a union for puppeteers or for puppets?
oh, that's interesting, Rick. Is there a puppeteer union? I do not know.
No, we're
There's
all
not.
we're all
You're
actors.
like
So
Curtis.
you can
all
have as
equity,
many
yeah.
characters as you want without
So a
the
puppeteer
union?
can do as many as they can do. Is that
Right.
correct?
Sure. I mean, your role in the show is Nikki, Trekkie, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's as cast, so it's various roles. Your role is various roles.
But I think that's why people were hurting themselves a little bit, because sometimes the scale of the set was for the puppets.
Oh,
like you
interesting.
bend down when you come through the doorway, don't you? The center doorway.
Yeah, it's for those who have not seen the show. Correct me if I'm wrong. The scale of the set, which is semi-realistic, is about 80%.
Right.
So the doorways are just under 6 feet.
Right.
And the windows are all a little small, a little
Perfect
bit
for me.
narrow.
I would love it. I'm looking for that house.
The effort is to make a compromise between the scale of the human beings and the scale of the puppets, and Anna's done a really great job of that. But there's all these fun little things like windows that pop open in ways that you don't expect them to, and there's pieces of the set that open. I think one of the basic design ideas was sort of like an advent calendar.
That's
So
right.
there's all these things that pop open and flip up and all that.
Right,
It's
right,
sort of a cross between an advent calendar and the
Those pop-up-
Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In joke
Yeah,
wall.
yeah.
And it made the write-in process easier because you could just have characters appear and disappear, which
Yes.
is, you know, it was
Marvelous.
a real gift because you could get information out very quickly.
And you didn't have to see them arrive. They just could do a
Be there.
pop and go. Which
and then
is
it was
really
the button
great.
on the joke a lot of the time, is the slamming of the window or the, you know.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's true.
It's consistently inventive, that set. It really is. Okay, so now we're off Broadway. We had terrible, horrible previews, which was a problem.
Actually, the audiences were loving it.
Right.
From
That
was
the
the-
first
I don't know,
preview,
it was just your experience of it.
our experience that was
Right.
hell.
And also, it was your first, was it not? This is sort of the first time
Yeah.
you've gone through that process.
Yeah, we wrote a couple for all children's of us. shows for I think for Jason too,
Yeah.
first musical.
Yeah.
And Jeff and myself, and a lot of the actors also their debut off Broadway.
I'm working on a new piece. There's nothing like that. It's just nothing prepares you for that.
But it was funny. I was just reading that account of Follies,
Oh,
Ted
the Helen
Chapin's
Reddy.
book.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
unbelievable. But it was amazing to me how many situations were similar and reminded me of our experience on this show.
Excellent. All right, so we're getting ready to open. Critics are coming. First of all, how do you all deal with critics? What's your thought? I mean, do they make you nervous? Do you show up when they're there?
We stayed away on like the 5 or 6 nights we knew they were going to be there.
Smart you. That's great.
But we were
What'd you do?
asked to stay away.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nothing.
Let's talk about this a little bit now. Who asked you to stay away?
Jason.
The director asked you to stay away. Why do you think he might have asked you to stay away?
It would make us and them nervous,
I
and
see.
the actors, and
I see.
I'm glad I stayed away. I stayed away
Well, there's
on,
nothing you can
on
do.
Broadway. There's
It's
nothing
up
you can
and
do. You
you-
might as well just have
Might
a
as
drink.
well be drinking down the
Yeah.
street.
Is that what you did? Yeah, excellent. Good. I'm always told to do that, and I never have the courage to. But I think after the last season, I actually might drink heavily. So, what about you, Jeff? How did you feel? I'm sorry, Isabel.
I want to know where the money came from.
The off-Broadway. Well, we talked about the off-Broadway money was a
For your,
consortium.
how many investors do you have?
Oh, there you go.
You mean now? The front money was only like 3
Yeah.
or 4 investors, I believe. 4?
3, 4. Yeah,
I
that's a
had
good number.
2.
That
Yeah.
sounds right.
And ultimately, we have 60.
I don't know. I don't
yeah,
remember.
I actually don't remember. I think it's something like 60.
Yeah, that
60
sounds good.
people,
Right.
really.
Yeah.
We
They
were
each think
actually
they own
turning people.
100% of the show.
Yeah.
You heard it here?
Yeah, we have a little couch in our office too. But we were turning people away at the end, actually.
But we didn't get to the opening off Broadway yet, so I just want to go in chronological order. So, Jeff, just for you, how do you deal with critics? By the way, but do you read them?
I mean, as an actor, I'd never read them
Right,
because you have to do the show the next night. But as a
course.
writer, it's like, well, the work's over, so you might as well, you know.
So you read them all?
Pretty much.
You do
I
the
mean,
whole, they send you the stack and you actually read it?
yeah, I try not to be too obsessive about it, you know. But yeah, I mean, it helps to know what, you know, plan for the future. You know,
Right.
it's just good to know what the picture is going to be.
And what did, were you in the house when the critics were there?
No.
So,
no,
so
no.
none of you showed up for the critic nights?
No, because I mean, even if like a celebrity like Bette Midler or someone would watch the show, I'd be staring at them the whole time. So I didn't want to be doing that with Ben Brantley or, you know, another critic.
Sure,
so.
sure. Okay, so the show opens, and because I don't read reviews, but I'm assuming it got phenomenal reviews or got very strong notices, and you guys decide that what's the next step, and so how did that decision come about?
That's a gut decision. I think you feel these things in, you know, on the level of your body. And fortunately, this was a gut decision that Robin and Kevin and I and Doug Gable of the Vineyard and Scott Elliott all shared. We all looked at each other and said, "This should go to Broadway. This is a Broadway musical." And you know what? It's a great Broadway musical, and it's just the kind of musical that Broadway needs. And we said, let's go for it. And then we really started to plan in that direction from that day forward, while also doing an analysis of what would it look like financially if we did it off Broadway as well. But I think that the audience for musicals is on Broadway. And I think that is the greatest thing that Broadway has to offer, which is its brand name for musicals in particular. And, you know, in truth, there haven't been a lot of successful off-Broadway musicals over the last decade. And shows like De La Guardia and Blue Man Group and Stomp are really entertainments. You know, you could call them new vaudeville shows. They're different. They employ dance, they employ music, but they're not musicals. And off-Broadway can always be a hospitable home for plays. But we really looked and said, we want to be part of the Broadway musical theater tradition with this show. And we think that we will do better by the show and by our investors by going in that direction.
So the decision is made, I guess,
Well,
a house is very
we looked at
some theaters?
some off-Broadway theaters, actually, just to make sure we knew the whole range
Right.
of things we were looking at. We all went. We looked at maybe 5 Broadway theaters. I think it was about 5.
Yeah, we looked at all the little houses.
Right.
We looked at the Golden. We looked at the Helen Hayes.
The
We
Booth.
looked at the
Walter
Booth.
Kerr.
We looked at the Walter Kerr, and
the
maybe
Music
one
Box,
more.
maybe?
Yeah, Music Box.
Royale.
Seems like
That
you
was the
picked
coolest
person-
experience
that's a fun
ever.
thing.
Just walking around shopping for Broadway theater.
That was damn cool. But you know what? I think the coolest moment in my life, and I'll never forget this as long as I live, was a couple weeks after the critics and the opening, or maybe it was a couple days, I don't know. They came, the producers came and they said, we have to have a meeting after the show, which, you know, is not always a good thing. You know, somebody gets hurt, somebody needs to go away, you know, there's something bad's happening. So nobody knew, and they sat down and they said, we think, you know, everything's going well, we think the show belongs on Broadway. And we're going to move it to Broadway, and this is going to happen. And just the elation in the room, just everybody was like, oh my God, did you just say we're moving to Broadway?
I just wanted to add, but this guy always thought it was a Broadway show. And I mean, we probably did our first reading, and Jeff was like, "We're going to Broadway, right? We're going to Broadway, right?" So the first believer was undeniably Jeff Marks.
And I want to say that when I thought it could go to Broadway was when I heard the vocal arrangements from Stephen Oremus at the O'Neill. Stephen Oremus was our music supervisor and orchestrator and arranger and music director with Gary Adler. And he wrote some phenomenal vocal arrangements that just, like, we had always heard it as a small sound, and we always thought, it doesn't matter if the singing is all that, you know, big or great, but he got them to sound like twice as many people, and it just sounded huge.
It was great.
So you decided to go now. Who
Well, we
figures out the
did. We
budget?
did when we narrowed it down. We took the puppets, and you weren't there though, were you? Or were you at one of them?
Oh, yeah.
But you weren't. Yeah.
To see how they would read.
Yeah, we
how
sat
far
way
back.
back
Yeah.
in the last row of the balcony to see how the puppets would read. And of course, what we found out is that they look better than people.
When your face is orange, you have a
When your face-
decided advantage.
Yes.
Big eyes.
Their heads are slightly bigger, you know.
yeah.
I mean, they're big as human heads, actually.
Sure.
And they read wonderfully in these smaller houses, and that was the delightful surprise.
So you decide. Does the
chose-
set get bigger? Do you
Well, we
add
chose the
costumes?
golden,
What-
which was only about a foot wider.
Yeah, for all
Really?
practical purposes, the proscenium opening of the Golden was the same as the opening of the Vineyard Theater.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I think Anna may have added a couple inches. It really
That's all it is, yeah.
The major set piece, which of course is the
Brown-
the front of
yeah.
the brownstones. Row houses is probably a better word for Avenue Q. Was virtually the same as it was off.
Did you use any pieces of the set, or did you rebuild it from scratch?
No, you have to rebuild it from scratch once
Is
you're.
that the unionist issue?
You have to, you have to have a union shop build it.
The
but, you know,
stamp and all that?
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, we probably could have used parts of it, but you need to build it stronger and sturdier
To last.
when you're going to do 8 shows a week and hopefully play many, many, many weeks.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So,
Well,
how much? I'm sorry.
I thought the biggest difference, was the number of people in the audience, because that really gave the laughs more air and more.
So the
they
rhythm
caught
of the
fire.
show- the rhythm of the show
show.
changed.
We thought, oh well, there'll be fewer laughs, but they'll be bigger. But that's not true. They were all there. There were some new laughs because there were more people to laugh, and it caught fire
Yes.
across 800 people.
infectious,
It was
isn't it?
There's
infectious.
just a difference between watching something with 120 people and watching it with 800, with a balcony, and you hear everybody roaring.
Yeah.
It's wild.
That was an interesting thing as a performer in the show. The move from off-Broadway to Broadway, we started becoming aware through the off-Broadway run that the size of the house sometimes worked against the laughs because people were in a small space and they were all sitting right next to each other, and a lot of the light from the stage was splashing into the audience, and the audience was a little self-conscious. Once we moved into the Broadway house and people were a little bit more anonymous and a little bit more sort of the safety in numbers kind of thing, some of the laughs that we'd had at the Vineyard that were guaranteed were huge, and laughs that we'd never gotten at the Vineyard ever were now enormous. So it's been extraordinarily gratifying moving to the Broadway house, where it's actually in many respects playing better than it played with the same
That was
material.
the shock.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I was one of the naysayers. I thought, wow, this show is going to get swallowed up in a big house. And it's just been an extraordinary process of seeing how it's played so well in a bigger house.
I used to think that, but I have this theory that there's something about particularly certain houses on 44th, 45th Street, the Schubert houses, or the relationship of the audience to the stage. There's some sort of energy about it that is so happy-making, and so you want to see something, you want to respond to it. It's I don't know what it is. It's that I think that the seats are lower, and there's some relationship that's very kind of chemical, I think, to us all, that makes, I think, almost more than not, that it's better on Broadway than it is, and it also looks better, it sounds better, it's always just sort of better.
Well, and to everyone's credit who was involved in moving the show, the Golden is a really good theater for that show, because the Golden Theater feels intimate. It has a feel that's comfortable.
Well, how many
and
seats
the
is
show
in the
works really
Golden?
well.
794.
Okay, so next to something like the Gershwin, or I mean, it really is intimate. It's 800 seats, and an off-Broadway theater, the biggest one is 500 now.
499 is the most.
So it's
you can
really
go.
200 more, 300 more actually than
300
would be,
more.
which is not insignificant. Okay, cool. So that now you're moving. Now you decide it's going to be 3 million, 5 million, 6 million, 2 million. Who makes that decision, and how? How does all that get done?
I don't know this answer.
We make that decision.
Yes, we do.
Well, we thought it should be. No, we have not. They don't tell us anything.
That's not true.
No, it's basically you know what you have to put in your grocery cart to go to Broadway. You put it all in your cart. You go to the cashier. She adds it up, and you get $3.5 million.
But all right, so it's $3.5 million. But there's some variables. For instance, an advertising budget, a reserve.
Sure, but the fixed costs, those things that really are like going to the grocery store, are very easy to calculate. And our general manager, John Corker, was commissioned to do so. So once you plug in how many weeks of rehearsal it will take, how many actors, how many musicians, how many stagehands, multiply their number of days, their number of hours by their salaries, you get a number. And you add up all of those numbers. Advertising is a subjective number that every producer has to decide, but the truth of it is that nobody's going to open a Broadway musical today without having $1 million advertising budget in its capitalization.
So of the $3.5 million,
$1 million of it was advertising, correct. And then loading into a Broadway theater is your second biggest expense.
Do you guys know what that is? What loading in is? Could you explain what that is?
Loading in is the process of taking your set, your lighting, your sound, and your costumes from the places in which they originate to the theater and setting it up. And you employ IATSE stagehands in order to do so, and all of them earn a salary, and it's a very fine salary. And when you add it all up, it's a lot of time.
What about a reserve is also
right? So then you have your line items for making the show, your line items for for paying all your people, your line items for making your set, and your costumes and your puppets. And your lighting.
And now you have understudies. I mean, you have more musicians or not?
Yeah, we added 2 musicians. We had 4 musicians off Broadway, and for Broadway, we wanted to. The guys, we all agreed that a bass was essential to to fill out the bottom of the sound. And then these guys and Steven said we'd really like to have a guitar as well, and we thought that was a great idea for Broadway.
And so that also means a reorchestration fee as well?
Not a whole fee, but you add 2 more charts. So then you pay the fees for those 2 charts. Absolutely.
We expanded the cast with understudies.
Well, yeah, we expanded the cast through the use of understudies, but we knew we were going to have to do that no matter where we went.
Absolutely.
And then you have a reserve, which are monies that you raise that you hold in reserve in case you lose money during your preview weeks.
I see. And
so you add all of that up, and in the case of our show, it was $3.5 million, which in the Broadway climate is now considered modest.
Absolutely.
A play comes in now for $2 million, and a musical anywhere from $6 to $10 million. So for us to be able to do a musical for $3.5 million felt economically responsible.
It's a sad state of affairs.
When off Broadway, it cost $500. So we went, 5 times 7 is $3.5 million. So it's a multiple of 7, and that was good producing.
Robin, do you have anything to add to that?
He's a genius.
What makes the difference between off-Broadway and Broadway?
Well, you know what? Off-Broadway, an actor is going to make $500 a week, and he's not going to be able to have a wife and children and support them. On Broadway, an actor is going to make a minimum of $1,300 a week, and he's going to be able to make a modest living. Same thing for the stagehands, same thing for the musicians. The truth of it is that on Broadway, the practitioners of the theater can earn a living. Sometimes it's a good living, sometimes it's a great living, but it's always a living. And off-Broadway, it's very difficult. When you go to a terrific New York actor and ask him or her to be in your off-Broadway show or in your not-for-profit show, they have to decide that they're going to do it because they love being in the theater and they love working on plays and musicals, and they then have to hope that they have commercial work and voiceover work or television and movie work so that they can meet their mortgage. Because you cannot meet your mortgage if you are a practitioner off-Broadway. And for the most part, that even applies to the playwright and the lighting designer and the set designer and the costume designer. So that is the difference.
Well, No, it's
But isn't it
true.
great that there's a whole profession where people do it for love? I mean, it's really extraordinary. I mean, I did it for many years for love. I run a not-for-profit theater. I can't say I made a living.
And you had to, and what, you know, and ultimately you made a big decision.
I did other things, yes. I made a big decision.
I mean, the hard part too, though, about that is that you lose people. I mean, when you're in an off-Broadway situation, because they can always get out for more remunerative employment, which is just about anything. So it's kind of tricky with that. I know.
But that's why we celebrate Broadway. And that's why we celebrate the American Theatre Wing and the Tony Awards, because that is part of the system by which we can make a living, because it is a brand name that people believe in, and they're willing to invest in, and I mean as consumers, to buy the tickets, so that they can get their musical theater and theater fix, and we can make a living.
So we're up to, you've raised the money, you've gotten the theater, everybody's on board. There was a fairly quick turnaround in this show from your closing to your opening. And you opened in the summer, which used to be considered, don't do that, but you did it anyway. How are these decisions arrived at?
Randomly. No.
What made you want
to
do
move
it
quickly.
quickly?
We wanted to move
on
quickly.
The momentum of the
right.
reviews, I'm
The
assuming.
reviews were so extraordinary that we felt that moving quickly would benefit us. We were in the minds, there wasn't anything opening, there was no new musical opening until October.
Yes.
And so we had a field there from mid-July till October where we were the only new game in town.
That's for press and for getting articles and for attention, essentially.
Exactly. So we thought that was an important thing to do. So our official opening was July 31st. And so we got through the summer fine. It was a fine thing to do.
And I think didn't Hairspray open last summer as well? I mean,
it's
no longer an issue. I think this would be a good time to just take a few moments, and I think we are ready to hear a few words from Isabel.
Before we get back to the American Theatre Wing's Working in the Theatre seminar on production, I would like to remind you that these seminars are only one of the many year-round programs that the Wing undertakes. You're probably familiar with the American Theatre Wing's Tony Awards, which is given for achievement of excellence in the Broadway theater. We also have an important grants program providing aid to off and off Broadway theaters. We have expanded our scholarships for promising students so that they can pursue studies in the theater arts. And we offer a comprehensive guide to careers in the theater to those seriously interested in entering the profession. As a long-established charity dating back from World War I and World War II and our famous Stage Door Canteen, all of our programs are designed to reward and promote excellence in the theater. We just love to introduce young people and their families to theater and the magic it unfolds. We take pride in the work we do and remain grateful to our members and everyone else whose contributions help make possible the dynamic programs of the American Theatre Wing. Our work is so important to the theater and the community, and we are proud to be a part of this exciting industry. So now, let's return to our panel on production and our moderator, Lonnie Price. Lonnie?
Thank you. I'd like to talk just a moment about auditions, and I guess to you, Rick. I mean, you must be in the process of auditioning puppeteers, I'm assuming. And what do you look for in a? I mean, this would be a job that has a lot of requirements. You have to do an awful lot of things. How do you? I'm sure you all look at auditions. I mean, how does that work for the show?
Well, this is sort of like what we were talking about before in terms of the creation of the show being almost in a way backwards. Having the songs first and then, creating a book around a lot of them and so forth. The casting was also very sort of non-traditional. Most of us were connected to the project very early on in the process. Most of us have never auditioned for the show. We just came along for the ride. I guess I'm the original cast member in a way, because I started working with Jeff and Bobby right from the start. And then, as you know, they wrote songs, and we wanted to do more workshops. And at BMI, we're like, well, we need more puppeteers. And I was like, well, let's get Johnny in. And we brought Johnny in, and then there was sort of a two-part conversation about Stephanie, and I said, yeah, bring her in if she's interested, and Craig was like, yeah, bring her in. And so we brought Stephanie into the cast, and it just kind of kept going that way. Because I knew that John Tartaglia, who plays Princeton, among other roles in the show, I knew he had a theatrical background and a musical background, as well as being a very excellent puppeteer, and I knew the same about Stephanie. So everybody that I brought to the project, I was like, I can vouch for these people. These are very talented people. It's been a hard show to cast with understudies and so forth, because it is kind of a quadruple threat. You have to be an actor, you have to be a singer, you have to be able to dance, and you also have to be able to puppeteer your butt off. And that's not easy to multitask. For those of you who have not seen the show, one of the things that makes the show unique is that with the puppet characters on stage, we do not make any effort to hide the puppeteers. The puppeteers are on stage with the puppets.
And was that a
in full
decision
view.
was that your decision? Was that ever a creative decision?
It was a pretty much mutual decision. I think when
It was
we
a very
first
clear decision, although no.
Yeah.
Well, actually, going back, when we did the very first reading, when we thought it was going to be a TV show,
Right.
We would never have shown the puppeteer.
Sure.
And we talked about, should we spread a sheet or have like a lemonade stand type thing? And we decided, this is ridiculous. They're going to be having music stands, turning pages. Let's just, let them hold the puppets. And then the audience told us they loved seeing the puppeteer. It was a huge surprise.
The best thing about having a reading with puppets is that, if you've ever been to a reading, you know that the actors put their music or their scripts on music stands.
Right.
And you see them look up and read and look and go like that. Whereas in Avenue Q, the puppet is looking and can act freely up here while the puppeteer just turns their pages. And that was amazing. And that also posed a problem when we began to stage the show at the Vineyard, because none of the actors could do blocking and hold their books because they have the rod to manipulate the arm. And they had to memorize their lines before we started rehearsals, and before they would ever put new lines in.
It's fascinating.
It was a
makes
little
total sense,
different
yeah.
than but it was amazing.
And then memorize all the changes every day.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, of course. My gosh, I didn't think of that. So I'm sorry, Rick. You also were saying in terms of the audition process. So
yeah, so it's a tough nut to crack. You've got to have performers who have some pretty particular skills. And this is a very specific style of puppetry too, the lip sync puppetry, the mouth puppets that we use in the show, a style a lot of people associate with television. It's sort of like, if you're doing a jazz dance show, a show that incorporates jazz dance, you can't expect that someone with ballet is going to be appropriate in a jazz piece. It's a different skill set. I mean, a marionettist could not probably do this show. So it's a very specific skill set. And I was not involved in the preliminary auditions for understudies and so forth. I came in after the producers had seen people and had kind of narrowed down their choices to, well, these are the couple of people that we would like to cast. What do you think? And then I worked with them a little bit in the audition just so they could see them working puppets and interacting with other puppeteers and so forth. So that's pretty much how the process
And did you
has been.
design the puppets? I mean, where did the
Yes.
so they are
Yes.
your designs?
Yes, I designed the puppets. I'm one of the few major designers on Broadway who's performing 8 shows a week. That's a challenge, William Ivy Long, if you're out there.
I don't know that we want to see William Ivy Long perform.
That's all right. There's a lot of people tell you that they want to see me to perform. Anyway.
No, come on, everyone, no.
Or maybe there's a lot of designers who'd rather I didn't design. I don't know. Anyway. But no, I designed the puppets, and I mean, right from the start, it was clear that they really needed to be this style of puppet. They needed to be mouth puppets. They needed to be the kind of puppets that people are used to seeing on TV, because especially at the very beginning, the show very much started as a parody of children's television, very satirical. And I think it's important to honor your source. When you're doing a satire, it's very difficult to well, for example, and this is the sample that I use all the time. If Daryl Hammond on Saturday Night Live, who's known for his Bill Clinton impersonations, came out in a red wig and spoke with a Brooklyn accent and said, "Hi, I'm Bill Clinton," you wouldn't buy that. You have to put him in a gray wig and you have to speak with a Southern accent. You have to honor the source, or people aren't going to make the connection. And so that was something that we always worked with right from the very beginning of this show, is that you have to have puppets of this kind of style. Because that's what people equate with this sort of this style of show, the parody of this style of children's television. So, and other than that, I mean, as a designer, it's you know, it's a completely blank slate, and all the decisions that you make as a designer are completely and utterly based on what works for the character in the context of the show. And the tough thing about being designing puppets is, even beyond designing costumes, you are creating the character. It's not, you're not creating what they're wearing, and then the actor fills in a lot of the blanks on what happens with the character. You're creating the character, so their eyes and their noses and everything. And so it's a matter of just, you know, the multitudinous choices that you can possibly make, and then paring them down. And Jeff and Bobby were like, "No, let's not do that. No, that doesn't work for me." And there was a lot of going back and forth. And
how many puppets are used in the show a night?
42.
Wow.
42. We started with, what, 6? Or 3, I think, even, you know.
And do they get maintained every day? Is there a person?
There's a certain level of maintenance. There is a puppet wrangler in the show, or puppet rustler. But not day-to-day maintenance, no. I mean, there's certainly upkeep, like Kate wears human hair wigs, which is always slightly ironic to me that this monster puppet who's made out of synthetic fur has human hair wigs. She requires probably the most maintenance because she's got to look pretty, she's got to look cute. She's a girly girl.
She's the romantic lead.
Yeah, she's the romantic. She's the ingenue. And so she has to, her wigs have to be attended to. And actually, probably the one that needs the most the upkeep is Lucy the Slut.
Lucy T. Slut.
Lucy T. Slut, sorry. Can't say the on television. Because, of course, Lucy's all about the way she looks. And so her wigs are like inflated every other day or something, whatever, to make sure they're nice and poofy. We probably use as much hairspray as Harvey Fierstein does. But, so yeah, there's a little bit of, you know, day-to-day maintenance sort of stuff. Hopefully, we've made them sort of goof-proof so they don't fail too often. We haven't lost any pupils or ears or anything like that yet.
Except in rehearsal.
Yeah, there's a couple of famous rehearsal stories about rehearsing when we were first getting the new Lucys. I should mention very quickly that from off-Broadway to Broadway, there were some redesigns, and not really huge ones, just some major tweaking. Minor tweaking to Princeton, particularly, and Lucy, and some brightening of colors. A lot of the characters stayed the way they were because they played really well. But where was I going with this?
Lucy changed.
Oh, yeah, Lucy changed the most. But in terms of the, no. Talking about Lucy.
In the rehearsal, there was a...
Oh, in rehearsal, yes. So the new Lucy wasn't quite done yet. We were trying different kinds of wigs on her because Lucy's so much about her hair. And in one rehearsal, I had just a wig just sort of pinned on, and during her big number in rehearsal, her wig went flying. And she really looked like nothing so much as a chemotherapy victim. And that kind of stopped the rehearsal cold. And eyes falling off, those kind of things are a little distracting to the actors on stage. It doesn't happen with the human cast, and I've never quite figured out why.
I've lost a wig once or twice. They weren't wigs to have anyway. They were pretty terrible.
Well, you might mention we have 2 of our
yes,
understudies
absolutely.
here.
Jody Eichenberger. Thank you. And Erin Quinn is here.
Quill.
Well, see, I'm doing so well. Well, nice to see you. Thank you for coming, both of you. I wanted to talk a little bit about marketing, because this is a very particular kind of show, and puppets, and I know that the initial posters were puppets, and I'm seeing ads that have more people in them lately, and I know, Jeffrey, this is one of the things that you're wonderful at, and I just wondered how you started the idea of how to market it, and what you've been doing since you've opened, and what's working, what you'd like to work better. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to start by saying that marketing starts with what are you marketing, and I think our best marketing decision was to do Avenue Q. And I think that when you do the right show, 85 to 90% of your marketing takes care of itself just by the nature of the show.
Right.
And I think that a Broadway producer who does great marketing could probably pump it up maybe another 10 or 15%, and one who does a poor job may diminish it by 10 or 15%. But I think that our ability to affect it is smaller than other people may think, because I think that when you are dealing with the theater, which demands a time investment and a money investment that's that large, people go by word of mouth to that first 80%. And if you've got a good show, people will tell their friends, and they will listen to them, and they will go. Having said that, the major dramatic question for us going to Broadway was puppets or no puppets? Advertise the puppets or don't advertise the puppets? And literally, Robin and I, on Monday, we would go, no puppets. And then on Tuesday, Robin would go, we should use the puppets. And then on Wednesday, I'd go, no, we shouldn't use the puppets.
Right,
and
that's true.
literally, like every day, we would go back and forth on, were the puppets a liability or an asset?
And how do you feel about it now?
I feel that where we are now, which is in which we in print advertising use a Richard Avedon photograph that
really
uses
adorable.
Our three puppeteers and some of the puppets. I think that photo captures better than any other tool that we've had the exuberance and the specialness of this show that uses both unique puppets but uses them with performers who are flesh and blood and have bodies and legs and arms and are enormously attractive performers.
Indeed.
And so we felt that when Mr. Avedon did that, that was the first thing that really captured what we were looking for. So that's what we try to lead off with now, is an image that shows you the exuberance of the show, the fact that the show will make you feel good when you go to see it, and that in fact it employs great-looking Broadway performers and puppets. And I think that, in a nutshell, that's where we are today.
And I was just also curious about, obviously well, I don't know that. I mean, will there be tours of the show? It's kind of a tricky show to tour because I know that the roadhouses are huge, most of them anyway. So what are the plans for second companies, or is it sit-down companies in smaller theaters, or what are you thinking? What do you guys think? Yes to everything.
We don't know is the answer. We're listening to the show right now and watching the audiences that are seeing it in New York to try to, and hope that they will tell us what to do in the same way they told us to go to Broadway. And I think that there are theaters that are 1,200 and 1,600 seats on the road in places like Boston and Chicago that maybe could house the show, or maybe we should play it in a 499-seat theater like some other shows have done in places like San Francisco and Boston and Chicago. And in Toronto. So the answer is, we're still learning in our experience in New York what the show requires, but we certainly know this. You will see this show in Chicago, and you will see it in San Francisco, and you'll see it in Columbus.
Great. What are you? How are you guys feeling about? I know the show's a very solid hit, and it's doing well, and all that's spectacular. How do you feel about its success? Do you feel you're at the level that you want to be? Do you feel that business could be better? Is the advance? I mean,
Yes,
this
definitely.
is so. Which yes?
Just yes to everything you say. No, the show is doing really well.
Very solid.
It's doing
It's gonna
really
be
well.
there
It
and-
could do better.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of product out right now. There's a lot of new shows. There's a lot of shows opening, which of course inevitably changes as the season goes on. I think, I ran into someone in the ladies' room who said, I didn't want to see this show because I don't like puppet shows, but now that I've heard you talk about it, I really want to see it. I'm going to buy a ticket. I think there's a little bit of that going on. I think we're finding that there's a little bit of resistance from certain people about so-called puppet show. Well, it's not just a puppet show. It's a story about real people going through real challenges in life. It has a romance that you actually care about. You root for the characters. It has a sweet, sweet, loving message at the end. You know, it has all the best qualities of a Broadway musical, and all people somehow are hearing is puppet show, and that's one of the things we talk about daily. How can we communicate that to people? Is it radio? Is it television? Is it? So we feel our challenge for the next 3 years to keep people coming to the show is to break through that barrier that people have towards puppets, which I think we will slowly erode, because we have lots of ideas of how to do that.
And also that the word is so extraordinarily
The
positive.
word of mouth, I don't think I've ever produced a show, and I think Metamorphoses had a great word of mouth, but I don't think I've ever produced a show that had a word of mouth like this show. People
Well, you run
fall
into
in
people
love.
on the street
Yeah.
coming out of it, and they're so happy. They literally, they're just sort of skipping down the street.
Yeah.
It's the most
Kevin,
infectious
now,
thing.
if Kevin McCullum were here right now, he would say, Avenue Q is the cure for a bad mood. And that's really the way he wants to advertise the show. I give him credit for that. And if there was a way we could just walk around and tell people that, it's, you don't need your Prozac, put it away. Just come see Avenue Q.
I
Save
think
you
it's
a lot
one
of
of
money.
it's one of the few musicals that's able to be about normal people with normal problems, because it's a puppet musical, because these characters are distilled versions of people you know.
And they're all based on people we know.
They're all
and
based on
us,
people
but-
we know.
but
Yeah.
anyway.
And it's because they're puppets, and that there's that element of fantasy that it's able to sing and be a musical and not have to be in the 1850s or some crazy, you know, where you believe that they break into song. The puppets allow us to do it, and that, I think it's really one of the few musicals that's about modern life.
Absolutely, and it's about modern. It really is about today. It's you've really captured what the spirit of being alive today is, and that's really unusual. And it's so great that you guys are young and that you're writing. I mean, so many of the shows are either revivals or by men in their 60s and 70s whom we all adore and have grown up with. But it gives us hope to hear, you know, new songs by people who are as young as you are.
But also, they're not cynical, which is, you know,
No,
there's so
it's
many
very
edgy
sweet.
new shows out, you know, that are kind of cynical. And this show is not cynical. It's very hopeful and sweet, and it gives you, the message is...
It's optimistic.
Yeah, it's optimistic, that life is okay. Whatever you're going through, it's only for now.
Yeah.
And if it's bad, it'll get better. And if it's good, you'll have a little bad, and then it'll get better again, you know. And it's a very sweet, hopeful... People are surprised about how moved they are at the end of the show. That's the big surprise,
Yes.
I think. I remember Marsha Mason coming out of the show with tears running down. I said, this is a musical. You're not supposed to be crying. She said, I was so moved. I loved it so much. And, you know, I mean, it's just that we need to communicate that as a message of what the show is about. And I think slowly people will do it for us, as Jeffrey said, and we'll find other ways to communicate it. Like right now, I think I just communicated.
Yeah, I think you did. I think you did. Just before we leave, what are you guys up to next? Do you have something on the horizon? Are you working on new ideas?
We're working on a couple things. I don't know how much we can talk about, really, but a musical film that's funny. Little stuff for Comedy Central and something for VH1.
So more television, perhaps, than film, than theater at the moment?
Well, we always wanted to go into television.
Right, I remember.
We just talked them out of it. That's all.
But I mean, there's nothing like a Broadway show, and we will definitely try and do another one.
We're actually talking to two of our heroes about writing a theater piece with them too.
Oh, that's thrilling.
So, yeah.
That's great.
What does it feel like to go to the theater and watch 800 people laugh and cheer and stomp and go out skipping down the street? Is it a high? Is it amazing?
Amazing. And it's amazing to get just exuberant emails from people saying, I had the best time. I've never seen my wife laugh this hard in 20 years. I can't take the CD out of my CD player. I walk around singing the tunes. People in my office are ready to kill me. It's just amazing.
I'm checking down a list. I went to school in New York, and all of my 6th grade teachers and all my teachers have left notes at the theater for me.
Yeah, they'll come out of the woodwork. It's nice. It's a good thing. And what about for you, Jeffrey? I know you're always working on other stuff. Anything you can talk about?
Yeah, well, Kevin and I are working with the Nederlanders on the first production of West Side Story to come to Broadway in 25 years.
Yeah.
So that's we're planning that for next season.
Oh, that's exciting. That's great.
Yeah.
And Miss Goodman?
Oh, I've got lots of things in development. I'm working on a musical about Betty Boop with Bill Haber and Andrew Farber. And I've got a little musical called Altar Boys that I'm developing, which is about a Christian boy band.
You got a part for me?
Yeah, definitely. There is one Jew in the band.
How tall?
Not very tall.
Not very tall.
And some revivals that I'm working on. I'm a consultant at the Roundabout. I'm an artistic consultant, so I work with Todd Haynes just on looking for new plays.
Mm-hmm. How tricky is that these days?
Very. It's
Why?
hard. I don't know why. You know, I've been doing new plays my whole career, and right now it's very difficult to find. I think maybe a lot of younger people are going off to film and television.
Yeah.
And a lot of talented people are writing for those mediums now, and it's to make a commitment to writing plays, you have to be willing to be very poor.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I agree. I mean, do you think it has something to do with that there doesn't seem to be a unifying crisis? We had all the AIDS plays for a while. We had, it seems as though there isn't maybe one thing that's moving people to
one
a
of
great
the
degree.
terrible things about 9/11 is that it has inspired a lot of young people to write plays about it. But yeah, I don't even think that's it so much. I think it's that, one of the things that Jeffrey and I and Kevin are committed to is bringing young audiences to the theater, because the theater will die if we don't encourage them to come. And I think a lot of young people don't feel that's a place that they have a voice, or that's the best place to say what they need to say, or they want a bigger audience. So the ones that hang in there are a lot of wonderful writers like Jeff Whitty, but less and less, I feel, actually. That's just my opinion. From reading a lot of plays, I read plays every week. I'm reading new plays, and it's tough.
It also seems that there doesn't seem to be a follow-through, too. I mean, with people who have a success, it doesn't seem as though there's the next play the next year and the next play the next year. There seems like it dissipates or something.
Well, I think some of that is the fault of the critics. Our critics are not like the critics in England, who are quite supportive of a body of work and have a longer view on writers. Our critics are good, bad, it worked, it didn't. They don't tend to look at it as a whole career, as a process for a writer. It's kind of a make it or break it world here.
Yes.
So it's very different.
Well, I hope it improves soon. I know that Robin was instrumental in bringing Proof to Manhattan Theatre Club and to Broadway, and that certainly was an amazing play. I hope there will be more of those. He's a great writer.
He's a great writer.
He's a great writer. And what about you? New puppets, new ideas, or any other things you want to be working on?
Oh, I'm a pretty typical freelancer. I'm working on lots of little different things. Yeah.
How long do you think you'll stay with the show? Do you know?
Well, my contract is up in. No, I'm fully expecting to stay with the show as long as they want me.
That's great. And will you supervise the puppets? Well, the producer said forever now. So will you supervise the puppets on other companies of it as well?
Oh yeah, I expect to. Yeah.
Oh, that's terrific. Oh, by the way, there must be some sort of idea of putting this on television, or.
But then we're talking about that too at some point.
Yeah, I think that would be swell. Be really great to do. I think we're in good shape. Yes,
You're
Isabel.
taking this show on the road. Don't you have to have auditions for replacements?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, where do you have those, and where do they come from?
It's a good question. And in the column of I don't knows, we're going to add that. But you know what? When we did Rent, we didn't know where these young rock singers were going to come from. When they did Stomp, they didn't know where those stompers would come from, and God knows they didn't know where all those blue men were going to come from. So if they can find blue men to populate the world, I know we can find more puppeteers.
Well, and on that note, I would like to thank this wonderful panel for being here this morning. This has been the American Theatre Wing's Working in the Theatre seminar, coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. Thank you all very much for being here.
If you were gay, that'd be okay. I mean, 'cause hey, I'd like you anyway. Because you see, if it were me, I would feel free to say that I was gay, but I'm not gay. I'm happy just being with you.
I bet shoes, pal Joey.
So what should it matter to me what you do in bed with count on me to always be